History of Babylon. Though traces of prehistoric settlement exist, Babylon's development as a major city was late by Mesopotamian standards. No mention of it existed before the 23rd century BCE. After the fall of the third dynasty of Ur, under which Babylon had been a provincial center, it became the nucleus of a small kingdom established in 1894 BCE by the Amorite king Sumuabum, whose successors consolidated its status. The sixth and best known of the Amorite dynasts, Hammurabi, 1792 to 50 BCE, conquered the surrounding city-states and raised Babylon to the capital of a kingdom comprising all of southern Mesopotamia and part of Assyria, northern Iraq. Its political importance, together with its favorable location, made it henceforth the main commercial and administrative center of Babylonia, while its wealth and prestige made it a target for foreign conquerors. After a Hittite raid in 1595 BCE, the city passed to the control of the Kassites, circa 1570, who established a dynasty lasting more than 4 centuries. Later in this period, Babylon became a literary and religious center, the prestige of which was reflected in the elevation of Marduk, its chief god, to supremacy in Mesopotamia. In 1234 Tukulti-Ninurta I of Assyria subjugated Babylon, though subsequently the Kassite dynasty reasserted itself until 1158, when the city was sacked by the Elamites. Babylon's acknowledged political supremacy is shown by the fact that the dynasty of Nebuchadrezzar I, 1124–03, which endured for more than a century, made the city its capital, though the dynasty did not originate there. Just before 1000, pressure from Aramean immigrants from northern Syria brought administrative dislocation inside Babylon. From this period to the fall of Assyria in the late 7th century BCE, there was a continual struggle between Aramean or associated Chaldean tribesmen and the Assyrians for political control of the city. Its citizens claimed privileges, such as exemption from forced labor, certain taxes, and imprisonment, which the Assyrians, with a similar background, were usually readier to recognize than were immigrant tribesmen. Furthermore, the citizens, grown wealthy through commerce, benefited from an imperial power able to protect international trade but suffered economically at the hands of disruptive tribesmen. Such circumstances made Babylon usually prefer Assyrian to Aramean or Chaldean rule. From the 9th to the late 7th century Babylon was almost continuously under Assyrian suzerainty, usually wielded through native kings, though sometimes Assyrian kings ruled in person. Close Assyrian involvement in Babylon began with Tiglath-Pileser III, 744–727 BCE, as a result of Chaldean tribesmen pressing into city territories, several times usurping the kingship. Disorders accompanying increasing tribal occupation finally persuaded the Assyrian monarch Sennacherib, 704–681 BCE, that peaceful control of Babylon was impossible, and in 689 he ordered destruction of the city. His son Esarhaddon, 680–669 BCE, rescinded that policy, and, after expelling the tribesmen and returning the property of the Babylonians to them, undertook the rebuilding of the city, but the image of Marduk, removed by Sennacherib, was retained in Assyria throughout his reign, probably to prevent any potential usurper from using it to claim the kingship. In the mid-7th century, civil war broke out between the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal and his brother who ruled in Babylonia, southern Mesopotamia, as subking. Ashurbanipal laid siege to the city, which fell to him in 648 after famine had driven the defenders to cannibalism. After Ashurbanipal's death, a Chaldean leader, Nabopolassar, in 626 made Babylon the capital of a kingdom that under his son Nebuchadrezzar II, 605–561 BCE, became a major imperial power. Nebuchadrezzar undertook a vast program of rebuilding and fortification in Babylon, labor gangs from many lands increasing the mixture of the population. Nebuchadrezzar's most important successor, Nabonidus, 556–539 BCE, campaigned in Arabia for a decade, leaving his son Belshazzar as regent in Babylon. Nabonidus failed to protect the property rights or religious traditions of the capital and attempted building operations elsewhere to rival Marduk's great temple of Esagila. When the Persian Achaemenid dynasty under Cyrus II attacked in 539 BCE, the capital fell almost without resistance, a legend, accepted by some as historical, that Cyrus achieved entry by diverting the Euphrates is unconfirmed in contemporary sources. Under the Persians, Babylon retained most of its institutions, became capital of the richest satrapy in the empire, and was, according to the 5th century BCE Greek historian Herodotus, the world's most splendid city. A revolt against Xerxes I, 482, led to destruction of its fortifications and temples and to the melting down of the golden image of Marduk. In 331 Babylon surrendered to the Macedonian king Alexander the Great, who confirmed its privileges and ordered the restoration of the temples. Alexander, recognizing the commercial importance of the city, allowed its satrap to coin money and began constructing a harbor to foster trade. In 323 Alexander died in the palace of Nebuchadrezzar. He had planned to make Babylon his imperial capital. Alexander's conquest brought Babylon into the orbit of Greek culture, and Hellenistic science was greatly enriched by the contributions of Babylonian astronomy. After a power struggle among Alexander's generals, Babylon passed to the Seleucid dynasty in 312. The city's importance was much reduced by the building of a new capital, Seleucia on the Tigris, where part of Babylon's population was transferred in 275.